All right, so I am so excited for this video because Adobe just released a whopper of a Lightroom update. Now, here's the thing. If I can editorialize for a second, I know that a lot of you have subscription fatigue, and trust me, I've got it too. But when you factor in not just the frequency of Lightroom updates that Adobe releases throughout the year, but you also consider that these updates often bring some seriously new and improved tools, that makes me happy. So, on to the actual update for May 2024. Adobe released updates for all of Lightroom's major platforms, including Lightroom Desktop, Mobile, and Classic. And in this video, I'm going to focus on Lightroom Desktop version 7.3 because there are some specific updates for this platform that no other version has. And this little fact further reinforces my prediction that we will eventually all rally around this version of Lightroom. I'm just saying it, don't shoot the messenger. Also, I'm going to share a separate video later this week on Lightroom Mobile, the updates there. So make sure you're subscribed and click on the bell icon to get notified when that video publishes. So the major tentpole feature that Adobe brought is Firefly. It's generative AI technology to Lightroom in the form of Generative Remove. Now, this is huge because we can now seamlessly clone out complex distractions from our photos without having to go to Photoshop and get greater precision than any of the other previous tools. So let me show you how that works right now, and then we'll dive into the other updates. All right, so as is customary whenever I do a video on a Lightroom or Photoshop update, I want to show you how to get that. The easiest way is to go to your Creative Cloud app, which you'll have installed, and then you'll click on Apps, and then you'll want to click on View Updates over here. And if you don't see the update for Lightroom or Lightroom Classic listed here, you can click on this check for updates button and it should appear. Okay, so this is the latest version of Lightroom. And before I jump into Generative Remove, which is the big feature, like I mentioned, I want to show you a few kind of cosmetic changes for you to notice on Lightroom Desktop. First, you'll see that in the grid view, we now have the file name in the grid, and we've moved the file type from the thumbnail itself to the top right. So if we go here, you could see this is the previous version of Lightroom. This is just a screenshot. You'll see we had no file names, and the file type was on the bottom left of the thumbnail, but now we have the file name over here, and we have the file type over here. So that's nice and handy. This is, I think, a nice little overture to Lightroom Classic, bringing some more info density to the grid view. I think this is a welcome addition. We also have a new icon for the healing tools on the toolbar on the right, which is a perfect segue to show you Generative Remove. And again, if I go to the old version of Lightroom, you'll see here that it used to be this kind of Band-Aid icon, but now you'll see it is kind of like a proper eraser tool. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you how Generative Remove works, and I'm then going to give you some guidance on how to use it. So let's start over here. All right, so let's say I want to get rid of these tourists over here, and I just want this dude over here who's about to get completely slammed with this exploding wave. Well, like I mentioned, we now have this new icon, and if I click on it, we have kind of similar tools. Like you can see here, this is the previous version of Lightroom. You can see we had a content aware remove, a healing brush, and a clone stamp tool. And then we had these options here. Now we have a few additional options, and these are awesome. We still do have the content aware healing brush, but it's called remove. When you hover over it, it's just called remove. And there are these two options. One is called generative AI and one is called object aware. And these are awesome. So to start, I'm just going to go with what would happen if I just wanted to remove these people as if I was operating on the previous version of Lightroom. So I would go ahead and I'm just going to make a big selection over basically all these people, just like you would any other time. Go like this and get this guy and we are good. Let's let go. We now have this kind of dialog box here and you can see that, I mean, it does an okay job. I mean, it's not really that good, right? Like I can try refreshing by clicking on this refresh button and Lightroom will try again. And we're just not getting the results we want with this brush. And that's because, you know, this brush is generally really good for smaller dust spots and smaller objects. But when we want to get kind of like heavy duty, this is where Firefly generative AI technology really comes in. So I'm going to show the overlay on hover so that I can select this and then delete it, and then I'll turn it off. So now we are back. Now let's try and use generative AI. But before I do that, I want to show you object aware because again, The previous version of Lightroom did not have that. This is awesome. When you enable object aware, the way that I can best explain it is it's as if you are bringing in the object's masking tool into your healing. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to make basically the exact same selection. It'll be a little bit different. It's not exactly the same, but I am going to select everybody just like I did before. And here we go. Now, with object aware selected, watch what happens when I let go. Lightroom actually analyzes my stroke and it makes a selection around what it detects as objects, and it gives it a little bit of a feather, which is really critical. Anytime you use Firefly or generative fill technology, you want to have a little bit of feather to basically blend the result in. So you can see that with the object aware selection, it just gives me a nice clean selection. I can click apply and it's going to use the same content aware remove, and we're going to get kind of that same kind of subpar result. So let's get rid of that. Now let's use generative AI, which as you can see is in early access. I'm going to talk about this in a second, what those implications are, but let me just show you how it works. So let's turn generative AI on and let's make a selection just like we did before. So, making these people into my stroke, adding them in. And the first thing that will happen, just like before, is we're going to get the object aware selection. So that's the first thing that it does. You can refine it with the add and subtract modes here for the brush, but I'm happy with this. Now, when I click apply, we're actually going to use Firefly. So first I want you to notice it's actually quite fast. Like that was fast. And you can see the results are so much better. Like they're just way, way better. And like any other time that you use generative fill, you have 3 variations over here. The key difference is that in Photoshop and in Firefly on the website, you'll have thumbnails of the variations. But currently with generative remove, it would be kind of distracting to see it because they'd be really small. It's better just to see them in the image. So you can go ahead and click to the right and get different options here. And of course, you can also regenerate just like you can in Photoshop. So if we click on refresh, it's going to reprocess these images and it's going to give you 3 new variations. So here you can see, actually, that one's great. Let's see, that one. That one's great. They're all great. I mean, that one's great. And again, you saw the results with the content aware brush. That's because, like I said, the content aware brush does use AI, but it's ideal for kind of smaller subjects or objects or distractions. Things like I said, dust spots, and maybe little street signs or even like little wires, stuff like that. Now, I do want to talk about what it means that this is in early access, which you can see here. If you click on this, you will get this kind of dialog box that shows you a demo and some information. I really recommend you take a few minutes to read this. I also forgot to mention that if you want to see everything that's new in Lightroom, just really quickly, if you go to help, you'll see this what's new over here. When you first install the update to Lightroom, this will pop up automatically. But if you kind of forgot what's here or you want to get back to it, that's how you get to it. So just wanted to show that to you. Now, I did a video a while ago explaining that Adobe is moving to a credit-based system when using generative fill or generative expand or text to image with Firefly. Based on the subscription plan that you have, the Creative Cloud plan that you have, you will be allotted a certain amount of credits per month. They don't carry over from month to month, but every month they do reset. With this generative remove in Lightroom, this is really important. As long as it's in early access, for as long as it's in early access, these will not count against your credits. At some point in the future, when it's taken out of early access, then every time you make a stroke, it will count against your credits. So what does that mean? Well, for now, it's a great opportunity to kind of test out its performance. Like, you don't have to worry about it affecting your credit bucket. The same thing happened when Adobe last year announced the generative expand and generative fill technology in Photoshop. When it was in that kind of early access, you could use it without any impact to any sort of credits. However, again, when it does get out of early access, at some point in the future, I don't know when, every single time you do a generative remove stroke in that image, it will count against your credits. This is why, and please, please take this to heart. This is why I'm stressing so much that generative remove should not be used for dust spot removal or anything like that. You do not need to waste the processing power or the credits for that. The content aware remove brush that we've had, it will do a perfect job. The generative remove is perfect for these really heavy duty situations where you have these 4 people that are just taking up a significant chunk of your composition, and you want to see how AI can remove them and blend in something else, which, as you saw, it did a really good job. Now, going back here, one of the things I also want to highlight is we all want this to be as good as possible, right? Like if we're going to use it, we want it to give us good results. So this is why I think it's so important to highlight these 2 things right here: provide feedback and report variation. Right in the app here, I can say, all right, you know what? This actually was good. So I'm going to click on provide feedback. I'm going to answer the question as to whether I got the results I wanted. I'm going to click on yes, and we're good to go. If it wasn't that good, like maybe this one wasn't as good, I can click on provide feedback and click no. And then I'll get this window here where I can choose one of the reasons why it wasn't to expectation. And then I can also put some comments. And then this is totally up to you whether you want to include the photo. For feedback, I generally do because I am very vested in this tool and I want it to be better. So I'm okay with sharing it. But if not, turn it off. The other option, and this is also very important, is this report variations. There have been times where during my tests of this generative remove brush, where the Firefly AI model would hallucinate and put a completely random subject. It could be a person, an object, just something that has no business being there. In those situations, if you see that, I recommend clicking on report variation. You can choose any of the issues, especially if it's a problem. Like this is like if it's really something that shouldn't be there, you can use this report variation. Otherwise, you can provide feedback, click no, and then you can say like it wasn't something that I expected or anything like that. You can see here. But again, that is huge news. This basically shows you the direction that Adobe is going. At least that's what I believe, where they really are investing a lot in Firefly. The more you guys use this, the more you provide feedback, the better it's going to get. Trust me, that is how this works. So that's why I'm pushing so hard on it. And again, I just one more time want to remind you that please do not use this generative remove brush for like your dust spots. Just don't. Use any of the other tools. It'll be faster and it'll give you as good results. All right, now I want to move on to another major update to Lightroom Desktop. This was one of my most requested features. It's a huge improvement to workflow if you're using a combination of Lightroom Local and Lightroom Cloud. Again, Lightroom Local was introduced last October at Adobe Max, and it basically removes the need to have to sync photos to the cloud. You can browse any local drive and manage and edit your photos pretty much with the entire editing suite. Now there's something even better. Basically what Adobe did was they answered the request to, hey, I have a bunch of photos already in the cloud. I want to get them off the cloud, but I want to retain the edits, and I just want to manage them locally. Now we have archive functionality. Let me show it to you. All right, so here you can see I have this folder that I created called Archive Me, and it's from 2014, July 19th. And a few things I want to point out, there are currently 7 photos here, and 3 of them have edits made to them as well as metadata changes. So let's say, you know what, I don't want these photos in the cloud anymore. I don't need them, but I do want to retain, obviously, the files, the original files. These are Sony RAW files, and I want to retain the metadata and edits. So here's what you can do now. You can either right-click on an individual photo and then go to Archive One Photo Locally. I can select just the photos that I edited, these 3, and archive them locally. I can right-click on an album with the 7 images and select archive album locally, or I can go to an actual folder with albums under it and archive the folder locally. So right off the bat, you have every kind of option in terms of choosing the image, images, album, or folder, which contains multiple folders and albums, and you can store them locally and then free up cloud storage space. I cannot underestimate how huge this is. So let's go ahead, and I want to remove, or rather archive, this folder. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select archive album locally. Now you'll have this screen here with a few options. The first is you can choose where you want to save it. You can save it onto any internal or external drive that you have. You can choose how Lightroom will organize the folder hierarchy here. You can either just put them all into one folder. You can have them sorted by date. So let's say you have multiple albums with photos taken on multiple dates. Lightroom will automatically create those folders based on this naming convention, or you can just copy the cloud album structure locally. So I'll stick with this option here. And then if you choose to archive where there are existing files, you have the option to either keep both or replace them. I'll just keep both. And then this is a really nice little touch. You can see on the bottom here, removing 7 photos will save up basically 260 megabytes of storage. So that is just a nice piece of information because it'll tell you exactly how much of your cloud storage will return. Let's go ahead and click on remove. So you'll see here, we are presented with a Finder window, and I'm going to put this on the desktop, and I'm just going to create a new folder called archive. So pretend that this folder is whatever the folder is that you want to archive your photos to. So it could be on, say, an external drive. Maybe you have a giant drive, or you want to store them locally, but you'll want to point to a folder that contains your archives. It's just easier, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to stick with archive here, and then I'm going to basically create another folder called 2014. And then in there, I'm going to create one called 07 July. And there, I'm good to go. I want to put it in here. This is just how you can see here how I organize my entire library. Let's click on choose. And then there you go. You can see up here that Lightroom is saving them locally. Now, 2 things I want you to notice. First, those 7 photos were in this album as well, around PDX. They were in here as well. They are not here. When Lightroom archives and deletes those photos, it will delete them from any album that the photo is stored in, because any photo can reside in any number of albums. So it's removed from your entire cloud account, your entire cloud library. The other thing is, if you go to all photos over here, you'll see under this section here where it says deleted, there are the 7 photos that we archived. You can always choose to permanently delete these. And once you do that, that is when you will get your cloud storage back, or you can recover them. So you have 60 days as it shows here. Now, let me go to the desktop, and you can see here is that archive folder, 2014, July, and then there is the folder here that was created. And then here's what I want to show you. You've got the raw file and the sidecar file. If it was a DNG, you would have that there as well. Now, here's the cool part. If we go to local and then go to desktop, which is currently marked as a favorite, go into archive, and then go to the actual folder, you'll see not only are the photos here, but you will notice that the edits are here as well as the metadata changes. So archiving does truly free up cloud storage, but more importantly, it also preserves the edits and the metadata, which I think is that is a must-have. All right, next is a feature that many Lightroom Classic users who have moved to Lightroom have been asking for, and it's now here, and that is Slideshow. So we now have the ability to go to any album and play a full screen slideshow of that album. It's again another nod to Adobe bringing features, really, highly requested features from Classic to Lightroom, and I expect we'll see more of that as time goes on. But let me show you how Slideshow works. I admit it's pretty straightforward, but again, this wasn't really here before. What you'll do is here I've got, for example, my album of all of my edited photos, and the way it works is whichever image you have selected, when you start your slideshow, that will be the first one, and then it'll move to the right and it'll keep going. So I'm going to highlight the album here. I'm going to go to View, and then you'll see this option here called Start Slideshow. Now, there currently isn't a keyboard shortcut that I can see. And if you right click over here, you'll see that there is no option to start the slideshow. You have to go to View, and then we can go here to Start Slideshow. And you can see the images are shown full screen. That little screen goes away, that little bottom menu bar, and it basically just moves from one image to the other. Now, if you go to this arrow here, you'll see a few options. First, the option to loop. So if you have maybe 15 or 20 images that you're doing a slideshow of, obviously it'll loop. Then also you can choose this speed from one image to the other. Like I mentioned, it's pretty straightforward, but this was a highly requested feature. A lot of people have asked me that, one of the reasons why they don't want to move to Lightroom yet is because they like having a slideshow. So you now have that. And then to exit, all you need to do is click on X. Of course, you can pause and go left and right. So that is slideshow. Okay, so another improvement that you're going to see is with lens blur. So lens blur was also introduced in October, and it was in early access. So if you remember, I was talking about how the generative remove is in early access. Now lens blur has been promoted. So if you scroll down over here, you'll see that lens blur no longer has that early access badge. This is now kind of a production tool, and it has improved performance. It has a better kind of detection and blurring. So basically, it's pretty straightforward. I'll put a card here to walk you through how lens blur works. I've released a video of this before, but you just click on apply. Lightroom will estimate the depth for you, and then you can control the blur strength. You can control the kind of blur or bokeh, so the kind of shape or specular highlights. And then you can also control where the blur depth is with this range tool here. So if I move this to the right, then the foreground will get blurry and the background will get sharper. So it's just a cool way to add or simulate a shallow plane of focus or shallow depth of field. And like I said, it's faster and the results should be a lot better. If you don't want it, you can turn this off. But speaking of lens blur, if you go to the presets browser here and you go to premium, you will also notice here there is a new adaptive blur background category here. And so these are basically presets that will analyze your image. Again, it's adaptive, meaning it will look at this photo and it will dynamically create kind of a depth map. And based on the preset, it will apply a certain type of blur. So this is new here. It's available to anyone who has premium presets, which is basically anyone who is subscribing to Lightroom or the photography plan or all Creative Cloud apps. Another improvement that you're going to find if you are using one of the Apple Silicon computers like the M2, M3 computers is that AI denoise will be faster because Adobe has enabled Apple's neural engine. So when you, for example, right click on a photo here and you go to enhance, you should notice faster performance here. So once you get your denoise settings dialed in and you click enhance, you should see that even faster than the previous version of Lightroom. Again, this is only for Apple Silicon computers. All right, so again, this is why I genuinely stick with Adobe, why I'm such a big fan, because I can't really think of any other company that does such a good job of releasing frequent updates throughout the year, but not hoarding these really huge improvements and these new tools for like one major event like Adobe Max. They could have easily held all of these until October, but they are releasing these really meaningful improvements and these new tools several times throughout the year. And for me, as someone who is a really avid Lightroom user, that's huge. Now, I kind of did just kind of scratch the surface of how these new improvements work. And there are, of course, a ton of different things to learn about how Lightroom desktop and mobile and web kind of all connect together. So that is why I would love for you to check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I am very proud of this course. It has pretty much everything you could possibly want to know about getting the most out of managing and editing and sharing your photos. You don't even have to take my word for it. There are a bunch of testimonials on the product page. And here's the thing. I update this course regularly. So Adobe updated Lightroom, And so I create new videos for the course, and those videos are available to all students for free. There are no additional charges. Once you're enrolled, you get access to all of the updated and new videos. And my goal is to keep adding those as Adobe improves Lightroom. So again, the link is in the description below. I hope you check it out. Like I said, I'm very proud of this course, and I think you'll love it. With that, I've got this entire playlist of Lightroom tutorials and videos that you can check out. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And of course, subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notified of all future videos, including the upcoming Lightroom mobile video. Thanks a lot.